Blog Talk Radio.
Good evening. Welcome to The View Up Here. I am your host, Canadian Glenn, and it is April 17th, 2019. Tonight, the new Alberta. And Prince Edward Island looks to make history on two fronts. Now, as I wrote the show page for this show, this 10th season finale of The View Up Here, Albertans were at the polls. Well, we know what happened. In the bigger picture, there are some specifics still unanswered, but Alberta has a United Conservative Party majority government. Premier Rachel Notley and the NDP will be official opposition, along with nobody else. Alberta is now a two-party state. Yee-haw. We'll get to that somewhat. But there is another election in Prince Edward Island on April 23rd, next Tuesday, that could make history on two different fronts. Incumbent Premier Wade MacLaughlin and the PEI Liberals have been trailing the PEI Greens and their leader Peter Bevan-Baker in polling for 6 months without pause. New leader Dennis King of the PEI Progressive Conservatives is also in the mix and could hold a real step in the balance of power if a minority occurs, but there are some that say the PCs could win a majority. Indications are Canada may very well get the first elected Green Party government in history, which is a sign of the times we live in. The second historic event in PEI regards a referendum, also on Election Day. It will be a simple yes-no question on adopting a mixed-member proportional voting system, which would make this the last first-past-the-post election in the province. What sets this process apart from recent voting system change efforts is this time it is a very clear proposition to voters. The question itself on the separate ballot is laid out in the Electoral System Referendum Act, so there's no room for confusion. This act also includes specific and complete information on what the MMP system would be, how the voting process would change, and what the results of it would bring. In other words, Prince Edward Island has defined everything that British Columbia refused to do. So all kinds of history there. But, as it says at the end of the description, we will look at the resultant history of Alberta's election and ramifications. And also, we're going to look at PEI. It's a big deal. But now, as far as Alberta goes, the current, I say current for a reason, the current score for the legislature of 87 seats is the UCP 63, the New Democrats 24. And I say for now because this is the first election in Alberta with a few changes on the way you vote. We have what's known the Vote Anywhere ballot. If you show proper identification at any poll That included advance polls, special advance polls, and even on the day of. Well, no, that's not true. On the day of the election, you had to be at your poll. But any prior voting, you could be anywhere in Alberta. And if you could prove your residence and who you are, you could vote for your riding. That's going to slow down the count in a few places. And I turn to Andrew Jeffrey in Star Calgary today. Several hotly contested Alberta ridings up in the air, with advance votes still to count. Less than 1,000 votes separate first and second place candidates in at least 8 ridings across the province, with nearly all polls reporting from the night before. These results are still unofficial because around 223,000 ballots won't be counted until beginning today, Wednesday. These are the Vote Anywhere ballots, part of a first-time Elections Alberta initiative that allowed people to cast their vote for their home riding at advanced polling stations anywhere in the province. Early estimates from Elections Alberta show 1.88 million people voted in this year's provincial election. These unofficial results indicate voter turnout could be as high as 70%. That's a dramatic increase from 2015, which saw 57% turnout. Elections Alberta has said it hopes to have all the Vote Anywhere ballots counted by this weekend, but indicated official results could be delayed until April 26th, a full week after. The still contested ridings won't be enough to change the UCP majority, but it will affect how many seats the NDP holds as opposition. And there are some very close ridings. Edmonton West Henday is less than 200 votes with over 3,900 to be counted. Less than 200 votes in Calgary Falcon Ridge. There are 1,700 votes to count there. And in a big race in Lethbridge West, the outgoing Environment Minister, but incumbent, Shannon Phillips of the NDP, leads the UCP's Kerry Flatla by less than 400 votes with a little more than 1,700 to count. Among the ridings with less than 1,000 votes separating first and second place, Edmonton Southwest has the most Vote Anywhere ballots to be counted, 5,679. And right now in that race, UCP, KC Madhu, is leading the NDP's John Archer by just under 800. And that is the only blue speck on the Edmonton map after the election. It is otherwise still completely orange. And it's less than 1,000 votes in Calgary Curry, Calgary Varsity, Edmonton South, Bath Kananaskis, and Sherwood Park. So it could make a difference. And depending on who those candidates are as well. So it ain't over yet. We know what happened. It wasn't a surprise. The scale was open to debate. That's about it. There were a lot in the UCP ranks who were expecting a complete landslide. You know, something around 70 plus of 87 seats. No, didn't happen. Otherwise, what I'm going to do is I've edited the Premier Designate's victory speech last night, which also could be dubbed his first campaign speech for the Progressive or for the Canadian Conservative Party. Looks like he's taken Scheer's job, but hey, that's just my opinion. Because of the way BTR works, you can't pause anything. You play it or you stop it. You start it again. It goes back to the start. So I had to record this today and put my own comments in through it. But here's what I selected to highlight from Jason Kenney's acceptance speech last night in Calgary.
Friends, Today, our great province has sent a message to Canada and the world. Alberta is open for business. Friends, this democratic decision is a message to all of those Albertans who are struggling, to the unemployed, to those who have given up, to the small business owners barely hanging on, to the young people who got their degrees and their diplomas but can't find work, to those who have lost their homes and their hope after years of economic decline and stagnation. To them, we send this message. Help is on the way and hope is on the horizon. Albertans have elected a government that will be obsessed with getting this province back to work. A team that will do everything in our power every single day to create tens of thousands of good jobs, by restoring investor confidence, by unleashing the job-creating power of our entrepreneurs, by taking Alberta from being the slowest moving and most over-regulated economy in Canada to being one of the freest and fastest moving economies in the world. So tonight I send an important message to businesses everywhere. If you want to benefit from what will be the lowest taxes in Canada, if you want to benefit from a government that will cut its red tape burden by 1/3, if you want to benefit from Canada's most educated population and a deep culture of enterprise and innovation, help us. Come here, invest here, create jobs here, renew the Alberta advantage here.
Yeah, okay. Well, of course, Alberta already has the lowest taxes in Canada by a fair amount. But, you know, that's not really important at this time. And this pretty much concludes the part of the speech devoted to the provincial audience. After this, we go federal campaigning.
And tonight, we send a message to our fellow Canadians from coast to coast. We Albertans are proud Canadians. And tonight, we have elected a government that will stand up and secure a fair deal for Alberta in this great country. There is a deep frustration in this province, a sense that we have contributed massively to the rest of Canada, but that everywhere we turn, we are being blocked in and pinned down.
Notice how he says a sense of being pinned down, blocked in. A sense, not a reality, just a sense.
Albertans have contributed over $600 billion to the rest of Canada through fiscal federalism in recent decades. And until recently, we've been a key engine of Canada's prosperity, of growing the middle class, of economic progress, and of social mobility. Our population has doubled in recent decades as we've welcomed newcomers from every corner of Canada, people who often left behind the despair of unemployment to enjoy the dignity of work in Alberta's opportunity society.
Anyone else find it interesting that apparently the only growth in the population of Alberta is from Canadians coming from other parts of the country, considering the amount of immigrants from outside of Canada that have come to Alberta in the last 20 years?
We Albertans are proud to have helped our fellow Canadians when times were good here and tough elsewhere. Now Albertans are going through a time of trial. We have the highest unemployment outside of Atlantic Canada. Nearly 200,000 Albertans are out of work. Thousands of businesses have closed their doors. Incomes are down. Bankruptcies are up. This is in part because we cannot get our energy to global markets at a fair price. We Canadians have been blessed with the world's third largest oil reserves and an abundance of natural gas. But we have been targeted. We have been targeted by a foreign-funded campaign of special interests seeking to landlock Canadian energy. This means that we Canadians have become captive to the United States as the only market for Canada's largest export product, our energy. As a result, we've been selling our country's greatest asset at fire sale prices, losing billions of dollars of value that belongs to us. That means we've lost money that could have built schools and hospitals across Canada. This giveaway of our energy has caused the flight of tens of billions of dollars of investment from Alberta, and with it the loss of tens of thousands of jobs. And we are subsidizing, in the process, the U.S. economy, while the investment that has fled Canada is fueling an unprecedented oil boom south of the border. It just doesn't make sense, does it? Friends, what I'm doing is explaining to Canadians who are listening the reality that we are living through. Meanwhile, the foreign-funded special interests campaigning against Canadian energy have done precisely nothing to stop the doubling of oil production in the United States or to reduce by one single barrel energy coming from OPEC dictatorships or Vladimir Putin's Russia. In other words, friends, we Canadians have been had.
A valid point. But yet, it seems that apparently this has only happened in the last 4 years. You want to talk about giveaways? Go look at Ralph Klein. Go look at Don Getty. Go look at Stelmach, Redford, Prentice, who did absolutely nothing to get a fairer return for Alberta's resources. It's funny how the free market doesn't apply externally. People, countries are getting their oil from dictatorships. That's called the free market. I thought that's what you clowns are all about.
We have in Ottawa a federal government that has made a bad situation much worse, killing two major pipelines, including Energy East, that would have helped our friends in Quebec and Atlantic Canada displace foreign oil with Canadian energy. That same federal government is imposing new laws that will make it impossible to get pipelines approved in the future. And we have provincial governments that have tried to block our energy. Tonight, all of that changes.
Again with the lies about Energy East. Notice how he says, replace foreign oil with Canadian energy. Why? Because bitumen is not oil. I don't see the Irving family clamoring to spend a few $1 billion on an upgrader to process bitumen. Why should they? Let's talk about the reality. There is no economic feasibility to start shipping diluted bitumen across the country. Next subject.
Albertans have decided that we will no longer passively accept the campaign of defamation against the industry that has helped to create one of the most prosperous and generous societies on earth. Let us unite together to unleash Canada's full economic potential. Let us renew the promise of confederation as a true economic union.
And what exactly did the Harper government accomplish in 10 years to fix that? Nothing.
We Albertans love our natural environment, and we seek to preserve it. We take seriously the challenge of climate change. We are world leaders in innovating to reduce emissions and shrink the environmental footprint of Canadian energy. And we are united in the need to continue diversifying our economy. But as long as there is a growing global demand for oil and gas, the question is, who will provide it? Will we abandon global energy markets to dictatorships that spread conflict and violence around the world? Or will Canada compete with and displace conflict oil with Canadian energy that is produced at the highest environmental, human rights, and labor standards on earth? That's the question.
Indeed, it is the question, but it seems that your cherished free market disagrees. They buy their oil where it works best for them, and it ain't here.
Fellow Canadians, the world needs more Canadian energy. This is not just about our shared prosperity. It is also a moral cause. Now let me thank the growing alliance of provincial governments who are champions of jobs, pipelines, and our resources. Thank you especially to my friends, Premiers Moe of Saskatchewan, Pallister of Manitoba, Ford of Ontario, Higgs of New Brunswick, and McLeod of the Northwest Territories. I look forward to deepening our work together to create jobs and shared prosperity.
Ah, yes. Team Carbon, Team Yesterday, Team Ignorance to the climate situation on the face of the earth. But it works for our benefactors, so, whatever.
Let me also, this is very important, let me also thank the growing number of progressive Indigenous leaders across Canada who want to be partners in responsible resource development. Alberta's government will sit down with you in the spirit of the treaties, in the spirit of reconciliation, to develop real partnerships that can help move First Nations people from poverty to prosperity through resources. We will create the Aboriginal Opportunities Corporation to help First Nations become co-owners of pipelines and other major resource projects. Because, friends, the time has come to move beyond symbolic gestures to real, concrete measures for Indigenous people to benefit from the resources that lie beneath the lands that they first inhabited.
Ah, yes. We're going to set up a provincial corporation which will give us legal arm's length to us bribing compliant First Nations and First Nation leaderships that wish to enter termination agreements to make some money and give up their traditional treaty rights. Wonderful.
And now, a message to those foreign-funded special interests who have been leading a campaign of economic sabotage against this great province. To the Rockefeller Brothers Fund, to the Tides Foundation, to Lead Now, to the David Suzuki Foundation, and to all of the others. Your days of pushing around Albertans with impunity just ended. We Albertans are patient and we're fair-minded, but we've had enough of your campaign of defamation and double standards. So today, with this election, we begin to stand up for ourselves, for our jobs, and for our future. Today, we Albertans begin to fight back. From this day forward, whenever you lie about how we produce energy, we will tell the truth assertively, and we will use every means at our disposal to hold you to account. When multinational companies like HSBC boycott Alberta, we'll boycott them. We will launch a public inquiry into the foreign source of funds behind the campaign to landlock Alberta's energy. We will ban foreign money from our politics and use every legal tool at our disposal to defend the working women and men of Alberta.
We will defend the multinationals that refuse to add value in Alberta and continue to automate jobs out of existence. Yes, those are the people we're going to be standing with. As far as this so-called foreign money thing goes, I'm looking forward to hearing about the Koch brothers, Sheldon Adelson, etc., etc., etc.
Friends, tonight, the silent majority has spoken, not the loud and angry voices on social media, but average Albertans who simply spoke today. Those folks who simply want their common sense values reflected in their government, who want high-quality health, education, and public services, but who understand that we need a vibrant private sector economy in order to pay for those things. Albertans who get that governments cannot redistribute wealth unless someone is creating that wealth through their hard work in the first place. Albertans who know that we cannot tax and borrow our way to prosperity.
So prosperity will allow us to supply services, but yet you want to cut taxes even further. So cutting taxes is going to pay for what exactly?
Albertans who understand that the carbon tax is all economic pain and no environmental gain, and who want to scrap the carbon tax cash grab.
Amazes me how these guys continue to go on and on and on about the carbon tax cash grab, but yet have absolutely zero mention of the rebate programs, whether it be provincially here in Alberta or federally, just like the Conservatives are sending out their quote-unquote tax guide to their constituents that makes absolutely no mention of how to make sure Canadians claim their carbon rebate. Gee, it's almost like they're trying to make Canadians pay more to feel pain when they don't have to.
Fellow Albertans, it's my hope that we can work together to stop the coarsening of our public discourse, to raise the bar of civility and respect. And while we will always have disagreements, as we should in a democracy, let us seek always to express those disagreements without being disagreeable.
You mean like your party refusing to debate bills in the legislature? Like walking out on votes for bills that were against your social conscience? Is that the kind of cooperation you're looking for?
Friends, nearly 3 years ago, we launched an audacious campaign to reunite free enterprise Albertans into one big tent coalition. Many said it couldn't be done, but we overcame enormous obstacles along the way. We haven't worked this hard or for this long for politics or for power, but for people. The people who have lost so much. The people at the margins. Tonight and the next 4 years is for them. It's about doing everything within our power to make it possible for people like that to achieve their God-given potential in this great land of prosperity and opportunity called Alberta.
Audacious is an understatement, to say the least. Kamikaze campaign in the leadership, identity fraud with memberships, illegal donations, RCMP investigations, lawsuits. Yeah, you overcame, all right. Guess what, Herr Göring? This is nowhere near over yet. Hang on.
And so, friends, I stand here tonight with you, with the members of our new government, to say that we will fight for those Albertans and so many more like them. And finally, let me speak to those Albertans who did not vote for the United Conservatives today. I respect and honor your choice. We will strive to be a government for all Albertans, not just those who voted for us. Albertans have given us a mandate to implement the positive ideas in our platform, to bring bold change that gets Alberta back to work. In implementing those policies, we will reach out to those who disagree in a spirit of dialogue, to find common ground wherever possible, to listen, and when we're wrong, to change course.
Talk is cheap. We'll see how long that lasts once government gets sworn in, and we'll see how long Herr Göring gives a fuck about the people in Alberta when he goes to take Scheer's job. But, we don't talk about that right now because look what we've accomplished. Oh yeah, we don't talk about court.
Friends, let me close as I began our entire United Alberta movement 3 years ago by saying that Alberta isn't just a place on a map. It's not just a random collection of people. Alberta is an idea. It's an idea of a free society that believes in the creative power of human potential, of people unleashed to pursue their greatest strengths and passions, a belief that strong and resilient individuals, strong communities are better at preventing social problems than a big impersonal and bureaucratic state.
Almost a tragic Freudian slip there. We believe towns are better equipped to prevent social progress than the state. Indeed you do.
We need to revive our belief in those entrepreneurial Alberta values that built this province into the envy of the world. And with your support in the 4 years to come, that is exactly what we will do, working day and night to renew the Alberta Advantage, to renew this province as a place of hope and opportunity for generations to come, an Alberta that is strong and free. God bless you, and God bless Alberta. Thank you very much.
We will work day and night to return Alberta to the 1990s, where we got into the huge infrastructure hole that we are still in, where we gave away all potential future revenue and positive benefits to our resources that most of the world now considers uneconomical. Of course, may the Christian God bless you all. Can you tell I might have been a little snarky making that this morning? I don't know. There was a lot of other stuff. I left out the part where he spoke in his poor French to Premier Legault of Quebec. I didn't bother using it. There was a translator over it. It was brutal. There was a story about how Jason Kenney thought about a 17-year-old boy every day for the last 3 years. Just the entire premise of that creeped me out. I wasn't going to put that in. But that's, like I said, there's a lot of federal campaigning there. Not much to the province at all. Now, one other thing. Today, National Observer, Carl Meyer, Suzuki Foundation, Tides, and other groups brace for impact of Jason Kenney's new war. A crowd of supporters in Calgary roared with approval as Kenney pledged to start a political war with those opponents who have also been among his own adversaries. He said his government would launch investigations of environmentalists complaining that they were spreading lies about the impacts of industrial development in a province that sits on the bulk of the world's third largest reserves of crude oil, following Saudi Arabia and Venezuela. The former Harper government minister, who has defended his stance, questioning the degree to which humans are causing climate change, wants to bolster the province's crude oil exports at a time when experts say a global transition to renewable forms of energy will make costly fossil fuels less attractive to investors. He made no mention of internal estimates from the Provincial Oil Patch Regulator, which has estimated cleanup costs for oil, gas, and pipeline facilities in the province could add up to $260 billion in financial liabilities. He also neglected to mention new federal government statistics estimating that the pollution from Alberta's oil sands in 2017 was higher than all of the gas emissions produced in 2017 in either Quebec or British Columbia. Instead, Kenney called out Vancouver-based nonprofits Lead Now and the David Suzuki Foundation, accusing them and other groups of a campaign of defamation and double standards. He goes on to quote what we heard in the speech. Kenney's old boss, former Prime Minister Stephen Harper, allocated $8 million in his 2012 budget to probe the political activity of environmental organizations, including the Suzuki Foundation. Last year, an Ontario judge ruled that the Canada Revenue Agency's political audits infringed on the constitutional right to free expression. Lead Now became the subject in 2015 of several complaints to the Canada Elections Commissioner's Office that accused it of using foreign funds for advertising. Canada's election watchdog cleared the organization of improper spending after finding no evidence. So this is nothing new, and it will probably go nowhere again, but, it's good press. It's good press. It's rather ridiculous considering all the money that big oil pours into their campaigns. And, it's not like big oil is all Canadian owned or anything. But this article, demonstrates that, Lead Now took something like $65,000 one year, and they haven't taken a dime since. This is basically startup money. And, oh my God, you're Russian agents or something? Like, give me a break. But it's good press. Oh my goodness. That's all I got to say about Alberta for right now. We'll move on to Prince Edward Island. Start out at the beginning of the campaign. This is back on March 27th. Kevin Bissett, Canadian Press. PEI Premier calls election for April 23rd. Now, Premier Wade MacLaughlin called an early election, announcing an April 23rd vote that polls suggest could produce Canada's first Green Party government. The Liberal government didn't have to take voters to the polls until October 7th under the province's fixed date election provisions. But there was an apparent desire to avoid overlap with the federal election this fall. Now, despite a booming economy, polls suggest the Liberal Party is likely facing a rough ride, with the Greens seen as a legitimate contender for power. A Corporate Research Associates poll released in March suggests the Greens had a healthy lead, followed by the Progressive Conservatives, who picked a new leader, Dennis King, in February of this year. The governing Liberals were in third place. The Liberals have been in power since 2007, and there are signs MacLaughlin, a longtime academic who began his political career in 2015 as Premier, is personally unpopular. Now, the standings at the dissolution of the legislature of Prince Edward Island were 16 Liberals, 8 Tories, 2 Greens, and 1 Independent. Now, Prince Edward Island has only ever been governed by the Liberals or the Progressive Conservatives. And the last time they had a minority was in 1890. So that's news to people on PEI. Now, what are they offering? I mean, it was hard for me to look at the numbers in the budgets and stuff for Prince Edward Island because they're like a fraction of Edmonton, really. But Prince Edward Island is a very small province. It is the Rhode Island of Canada. And it's unique without a doubt. Without a doubt. Now, about the governing Liberals. Their platform in brief, basically, they talk about their accomplishments, 4 years of real progress, which they can't argue for. The economy is in decent shape. The Liberal plan will create 3,500 full-time jobs in the next 3 years, reduce property taxes by 10%, and provide a tax rebate for affordable rentals, and reward home ownership while easing the cost of renting. Through the new Patients First Health Care Plan, ensure faster access to services, a $500 island education bond for every PEI child under the age of 16 to work towards post-secondary costs, introduce a PEI workers benefit that would provide support to 12,600 working islanders, increase a bursary to $2,700 per year, and improve access to post-secondary education at the University of Prince Edward Island, UPEI, Holland College, and Collège de Lille, and add 150 new frontline staff to the education system. So, just plugging holes, really, nothing new. What about the Green Party? Now, the Green Party platform includes $30 million of new spending over the first year of a Green government. And they say this will result in a balanced budget for the 2019-20 fiscal year, considering that PEI is currently running a surplus. The most expensive commitments in the platform relate to increasing social assistance rates, which is a $10 million cost, expanding the supply of affordable housing, $5.5 million, raising wages for early childhood educators, $3.5 million, and extending dental coverage to social assistance recipients, $2.5 million. Now, this is a multi-year platform, or no, I'm sorry, I got that backwards. This is a one-year platform, but the Liberals are covering the entire term. Oh, let me get that straight. Now, there are other things here in their platform. They plan to offer a comprehensive midwifery service, birth control coverage to move under the PEI formulary, a social prescribing pilot allowing healthcare professionals to prescribe physical, mental, and cultural activities, plan to phase out provincial standardized testing in favor of International Program for International Student Assessment Program. Minimum wage would increase to $15 by 2023. The voting age would be lowered to 16. An independent ombudsperson office to investigate individual complaints about government programs and services, an independent child advocate, and election dates would be fixed. This is something that has come up quite a bit. Even Elizabeth May, when she was campaigning on their behalf on PEI, said that this really isn't about the Green brand. It's about their programs. They're a very social, grassroots party that way. Kind of like, damn, I can't believe I forgot their name. Solidaire Québec. I think I got that right. But that's their angle. Now, why is that showing up? What do you mean? I can see it in the chat. I don't get it. Okay, what about the Progressive Conservatives? Well, their entire platform is $51.9 million. PC leader Dennis King officially released the party's full platform on April 5th. Sorry, this is Tony Davis from CBC. April 12th, this was written. The platform includes promises regarding the economy, education, the environment, general governance, healthcare, housing, social programs, and wait, there's more. They are going to replace the Hillsborough Hospital, hire 110 frontline education staff, including teachers, EAs, guidance counselors, and more, a quote-unquote comprehensive housing plan, community-based preschool for 4-year-olds, expanding the scope of practice for health care professionals, which would be similar to what the Greens had in mind, increasing the basic personal tax exemption from $9,000 to $12,000, incentives for electric vehicles and solar energy, expanding local fertility services and offering financial incentives for in vitro fertilization treatment, allow private stores to sell beer and wine, and lowering the small business tax from 3.5% to 1%. They would also have dedicated ministers for fisheries and agriculture, breaking them up. So a lot of things in common with the three main parties. Some things different, but it's the incumbent Liberals that seem to be the most, not too much to offer. They think they can just ride on their record. Well, apparently the polls don't think so. What else is strange or unique or noteworthy of the Prince Edward Island election? Tony Davis again, CBC. This is from April 12th. Women make up a third of candidates in PEI election. In the 2015 provincial election in Prince Edward Island, 31 of 105 candidates were women, representing 29.5%. Now, for the 2019 provincial election, that number has risen to 33.3%, 35 of 109. Don Wilson, Executive Director of the PEI Coalition for Women in Government, says, it is a modest increase, but it's still significant in the fact we have reached that one-third mark. It's a positive sign to see more women running this election, and in past elections, the number of women elected tracked closely with the number of women nominated. So we're hopeful. The NDP has confirmed 11 female candidates for a total of 46%. The Green Party has 9 women nominated, which makes for 33%, and the Liberal Party has 8 for 30%. Now, this, of course, is in a 27-seat House. Sorry, just entering into the chat. Now I remembered why I don't usually fire up the chat. No women are running as independents this year. The Progressive Conservatives have 7 women running for 26%. So this is interesting. Again, a different statistic. Now, who are these guys? Who is Dennis King, the leader of the Progressive Conservatives? Leader since only February. I mean, one of the issues here is the 3 party leaders who all seem to have a chance of forming the next government. The one with the most experience is Premier Wade MacLaughlin, and his total experience is 4 years. So that's interesting. But Progressive Conservative leader Dennis King has been around politics a long time. But when the writ dropped for the provincial election, he had been a politician himself for just over 5 months. This is from Kevin Yar from CBC, April 10th. And Mr. King is finding it a very different experience. When I got into this, I thought I would have drawn a lot on the past experiences. But I quickly realized that much of my past experience was just as an observer. King became leader of the party on February 9th. Now, everybody then knew that there was an election coming soon, but King has been campaigning since he announced his candidacy for the leadership last November. He's the rookie in a race where no party leader has more than 4 years' experience as an elected representative. He said he's been around government enough to know how it works, but separated enough to approach it differently. In the 1990s, King joined the National Council. It was the body given the task of bringing together the Progressive Conservative Party and the Reform Party of Canada. My reason to get involved in that was to make sure the progressive voice didn't get lost in the Conservative Party. And I quickly realized it actually did get lost, and I didn't fulfill the full extent of my term. So in other words, Mr. King said, you guys are going goose-stepping, I'm out. He left the National Council to work as a Director of Communications in Prince Edward Island, PC Premier Pat Binns' office. He moved away from politics when the Liberals came to power, but continued working in public relations. Despite his experience in communications, King admits to being a little anxious about knocking on that first door. He had no idea what to expect. Hundreds or even thousands of doors later, He still can't be sure what he's going to hear because the diversity of views has been surprising to him. Now, isn't this a reflection of why politics are the way they are? Just listen to this. Most Islanders want to talk about themselves, the issues that are most concerning to them, and I'm shocked at how diverse those views and opinions are. Well, doesn't that just tell you a whole lot? So, makes it sound like he is a true progressive conservative from way back, but he's new to having his name with the box beside it. How about the Green Party leader, Peter Bevan-Baker? Peter Bevan-Baker. That was a Freudian slip, thinking about food. Kevin Yar again, CBC, how Peter Bevan-Baker learned to love politics. Now, he says that if he had lost his bid to be an MLA in 2015, that might have been the end of his political efforts. It was his 10th run, with previous attempts to win a seat for the Green Party federally and provincially beginning in Ontario. Prior to the 2015 election, his hopes were not high. His main goal was to insert some green ideas into the debate. He ended up winning his seat by the largest margin in the province. He enters the 2019 election with the Green Party leading the polls. Now, instead of sitting on the front porch of that farm surrounded by goats and chickens, Bevan-Baker is preparing for the possibility he might be the next premier. I'm ready for that task. I've gathered some wonderful people around me, he said. Despite working for more than 2 decades to win an election, Bevan-Baker said he was never sure he was cut out for politics. I'm interested in ideas. I'm interested in finding solutions to all of the complicated problems. I'm not interested in partisan politics. But he said he has been surprised to find that politics agrees with him. He's come to understand it better and had the opportunity to learn more about the province and himself. Bevan-Baker said he released the platform for the Green Party all at once, rather than piece by piece, to show it as a single, coherent policy. He said, I wanted to signal to Islanders in our platform, this is the sort of mentality we will bring to governing the island. Now, they're not big on TV. They're not big on much except actual door-to-door. The Green Party in Prince Edward Island. There's seems to be everybody agrees that that's how he got elected in 2015. That's how he got the largest margin of victory in 2015. So that's exactly what he's been doing this entire campaign. He had to take time off door knocking to attend the one debate. Now, the platform of the Green Party is mostly focused on social issues rather than the traditional green ground of the environment. More than half the new spending promised by the Green Party is focused on housing and social assistance rates. Yes, our economy is growing, but the wealth that is being created by that economy is not going to the people who need it most. We have, like everywhere else in the world, growing inequality here on Prince Edward Island, Bevan-Baker. Now, this is an interesting approach for a party that named itself in honor of the environment, but perhaps not surprising for one that is looking to present itself as a party ready to govern. I did solicit on Twitter. I said, do I have any PEI followers? What's going on? I was surprised. And to be honest, I was a little not sure when I got it until I did some more research. And it does seem, I mean, we'll get into the latest polling here in a second. This is indeed a real race it may have been three parties, but I think it's down to two now. It's down to the Greens and the Progressive Conservatives. The governing Liberals look like they're going to be out the door. So that's another Liberal provincial government gone. Somehow I don't see the Progressive Conservatives of PEI joining on to the carbon tax coalition, but still. Now, I have something from today in the Charlottetown Guardian. This is by Stu Neatby. This is the latest polling. Of course, this is, 6 days out from Election Day. Prince Edward Island may be headed for a minority government, with the Green Party maintaining a slight lead in public support over both the Progressive Conservatives and the Liberals, says an exclusive poll commissioned by the newspaper The Guardian. The poll, conducted by Narrative Research, shows Peter Bevan-Baker's Green Party has maintained a narrow lead over both the Liberals and PCs, despite the party being outspent and out-fundraised by both other parties. The Greens garnered the support of 35% of decided and leaning voters, but the PCs, under new leader Dennis King, are showing the strongest increase in support and are closing in on the Greens, gaining the support of 32% of decided and leaning. And the Liberals are not far behind at 29%. The NDP, led by Joel Byrne, are sitting at 3%. 8% are undecided. Now, the new polling numbers indicate that the election is still very much a three-way battle. There is a definite probability you will get a minority government, said Narrative Research CEO Margaret Brigley. Now, governments in PEI have historically went back and forth between PC and Liberal. This election represents the first time since Confederation that a third party, the Greens, has been in serious contention to win in this province. Now, the new poll indicates the PCs have gained significantly in popularity since King won a leadership contest in February. The PCs have seen their polling numbers climb from 20% last November to 32% this week, a jump of 12 points. While still in the lead, the Greens have seen their share of support drop by 2 points since November, from 37% to 35%. The Liberals, meanwhile, have seen their numbers drop 7 percentage points since November, from 36 to 29. Now, Green leader Bevan-Baker has maintained his position as the most preferred choice as Premier, earning the support of 37%. King was preferred in 23%, and current Premier Wade MacLaughlin was a choice of 22%. NDP leader Joe Byrne, 4%. 12% did not indicate a preference. So they go down into specific seats for their counts. But it says here that the Greens may face more of a challenge to turn out its base of voters than the other two mainline parties, said the pollers. The folks are intending to vote Green. They're less committed in their response. So it's a softer vote intention right now. When you look at the folks who are intending to vote Liberal, they are the most definitive and most committed to their party. Interesting. So it will go down. There's no doubt about it. It's too bad that it won't get more national attention. But then, that entry. Sorry. Oh, and a drink. Hang on. Wow, we're just cruising on time tonight. It's going to be a short show. I can edit all this out for YouTube. It's live. I can do it now. You understand, right? The second historic issue in Prince Edward Island is about the referendum, which has two conditions to be binding on mixed member proportional representation. I have an article here from Kevin Bissett, Canadian Press. This is back in February February 18th of this year. All eyes turn to tiny PEI as issue put to voters. Tiny Prince Edward Island has a chance to send a big message to the rest of the country about electoral reform when voters are asked to consider proportional representation in a referendum. Now advocates hope Canada's smallest province will lead the way. We were really counting on British Columbia. This was really devastating for our cause, said former guest of the View Up Here, Réal Laverne, president of Fair Vote Canada. We thought if a referendum was ever going to win, the conditions were good for that referendum. In the end, voters voted more along partisan lines. Now, information sessions are being held across PEI to educate the public on the pros and cons of switching from the current first-past-the-post system to a mixed-member proportional voting system. But this isn't the first time PEI voters have been asked to consider electoral reform. In fact, they voted 52% in favor of switching to MMP during a plebiscite in 2016. But Liberal Premier Wade MacLaughlin rejected the results because of a low turnout of about 36%. I think turnout will be much higher this time because the referendum is being held in conjunction with the provincial election. We usually get election turnout around 80%, said the referendum commissioner, Gerard Mitchell. This is a great exercise in direct democracy for the people, so they should vote and be informed what their choices are. In 2016, voters were given 5 choices, but this time it will simply be a chance to vote yes or no to the question, should Prince Edward Island change its voting system to a mixed-member proportional voting system? Yes, a no vote would see no change in the way members are chosen, while a yes vote would see 18 members out of the 27 chosen in redrawn electoral districts and 9 others chosen in province-wide ballots. Mitchell said under such a system, people would get 2 votes. One for district MLA, and the other would be for the party list candidate. The party list is used to top up the seats of those parties who did not get enough seats at the district level to reflect their share of the popular vote. Now, about 90 countries use some form of PR, while a few, including New Zealand, Germany, and parts of Scotland, use a mixed-member PR system. Now, Réal Laverne says it has been difficult to convince Canadians to make the change because most politicians feel secure with the status quo. The interest of politicians is always for first past the post because whoever is in power got elected by first past the post. MLAs look at it and say, maybe I wouldn't be re-elected if we changed the system. But still, expectations are that Quebec's new Coalition Avenir Québec government, which campaigned in part on the issue, will adopt an MMP system in the next year or so. Don Desseroud, a political scientist at the University of PEI, said many islanders didn't pay any attention to the last plebiscite until the government decided not to accept the results. That's a question of trust in government, integrity, and worrying whether governments are serious when they make these promises to have a vote and respect the results. Réal Laverne said switching from first past the post would give third parties a greater chance of winning seats and would allow the results to better reflect the way people actually voted. I'll go along with that. Everybody knows that. All the listeners know that. I'll go along with that. Now, what exactly, why is this such a difference from BC? And it is. Oh, it is. Now, there is the Electoral System Referendum Act, This is a law that lays out this entire binding referendum. Now, in the Act, I look at page 6, and there is a section that says referendum question. A referendum respecting the mixed member proportional voting system shall be conducted throughout the province in conjunction with the general election. The question: at the referendum, a person who is entitled to vote may indicate his or her approval or disapproval in respect of the referendum by answering the following question. Should Prince Edward Island change its voting system to a mixed member proportional voting system? And they have a picture of the ballot. They have who's entitled to vote, everybody who's entitled to vote in the general election. When is the referendum binding? The result is binding on the government only if A, more than 50% of the validly cast referendum ballots vote the same way on the question, which is 50 plus 1. But this is the important part. B, in at least 60% of electoral districts, more than 50% of the ballots cast vote the same way. So, you can have 50% plus 1, but if it's really, really split and you don't get 60% of the ridings voting the same way, it's not binding. There are some people that say this could be an issue because, of course, the Green Party is the biggest proponent for electoral reform. And as we heard from the pollster, they have the softest voter base. So we'll see. But it did pass last time, even though it was a very low turnout. It's still fairly indicative of what you can expect. So, if it is binding, where the result of the referendum is binding, the electors referred to in that subsection vote in favor of adopting a mixed member proportional system, the government shall take steps that the government considers necessary or advisable to implement the result of the referendum, including introducing the legislation needed to implement a mixed member proportional system that is substantially as described in this Act in sufficient time for that voting system to be in place for the next following general election. So there's no getting out of this. It's up to the people. Now there is a referendum commissioner. The powers and duties of the referendum commissioner. The commissioner shall implement public education and information programs relating to the referendum, the advertising, the voting systems, including the MMP system, as described on the ballot. Take the steps that they consider necessary to assist individuals and eligible organizations to organize to register as advertisers. Take the steps that they consider necessary to register eligible referendum advertisers in a timely manner. And of course, same as always, same just like the election, have financial agents, etc., etc. The commissioner will announce the final result. The commissioner will provide a report to the Speaker of the Assembly, and he'll do anything else that he can do under the Act if necessary. So he certainly has power, and it's nice to see that his report goes to the legislature. It doesn't go to the government. Now that report, the referendum commissioner shall, before or during the session of the Legislative Assembly next following the election, and after the financing reports required to be filed have been filed, Deliver a report to the Speaker respecting the public education and information efforts undertaken related to the contents of the financing reports and concerning any matter related to the referendum and the referendum process that they consider should be brought to the attention of the Assembly. That report shall be received. Well, let me see here. Oh, okay. It just says in law that the Speaker will accept the report from the Referendum Commissioner. So, I mean, they've got it laid out. It's pretty clear. Now, what exactly is the system that's a yes or no? You know, it's not like BC. It's not like PEI was in 2016 with 5 choices. This is your choice, yes or no. Schedule 2 of the Electoral System Referendum Act, description of the proposed mixed member proportional system. And of course it has the preamble that MMP is a form of proportional representation. In the proposed MMP system, a reduced number of members of the Legislative Assembly would be elected in electoral districts to represent local constituents, while the remaining members of the Legislative Assembly would be elected through a new province-wide party list system. The MMP model recommended in the report of the Special Committee on Democratic Renewal, dated April 15, 2016, would see a decrease in the number of PEI electoral districts from the current 27 to 18. Each of these 18 electoral districts would be represented by 1 member. 9 additional members of the Assembly would not represent an electoral district, but would hold province-wide party list seats. Voters would elect these 9 members of the legislature from an ordered list of candidates provided by the parties. Now, with MMP, there are 2 parts to the ballot that voters must fill out on election day. On the first part, voters mark an X indicating their preferred candidate for their local district. On the second part of the ballot, voters mark an X indicating their preferred candidate from the list for their preferred party. Those votes on the second part of the ballot would be used to determine each party's province-wide popular vote. And the number of votes each candidate on the party list receives will determine their ranking. List seats are allocated proportionally based on the popular vote each party receives on the second part of the ballot. The system is designed so that the list seats become top-up or compensatory seats to accommodate for disproportionate results in the local district first past the post elections. Now let's keep that in mind. You have 1 vote for 1 member in your district. That is first past the post. The mixed member PR are the compensatory seats. It goes on to explain exactly what the ballot would be like. But that sounds pretty simple to me, and it sounds pretty fair to me. I saw a comparison today. If perhaps that system would have been in place for the Alberta election last night, the UCP would still have a majority, but it would be barely over 50. And the NDP would be into the mid-30s, and there would be a few Alberta party. So, you know, the vote last night in Alberta was overwhelming enough for a majority. There was a actual majority. More than 50% of votes cast were for the United Conservative Party. God help our souls. So that's one thing. At least we had an actual majority in this province. And we just had a redistricting before this election, so you can't say anything about that either. Ontario West is alive and well. But anyway, back to the mixed member proportional referendum in PEI. You know, I mean, listeners are going to know. I hope it gets passed. I hope they do it. Somebody's got to do it, for Christ's sake. It's the smallest laboratory. It is let's be honest here, it is a very small market. There's not going to be a lot of money for national overspill. That may be an advantage to Prince Edward Island. But we'll see what they do next Tuesday. We'll see. Could be a Green government. Could be Progressive Conservative government. It's likely not a Liberal government. Another first that Prince Edward Island had. In 2015, when Wade MacLaughlin became Liberal Premier, first openly gay man to be Premier in Canada. We set a lot of history there for such a little place. God damn. Good luck to PEI. Sounds like you don't have any choices like we had here. So, to me, sounds like you guys can't lose, to be honest. Wow. This is the end of Season 10 of The View Up Here. The 5th complete year. Yeah, I don't know. I tell people, this all started because of 2 words. Fuck Harper. And here we are, all this time later. There will be a couple weeks off. Your host will be on the road next week regardless. There wouldn't be a show next week. But there will probably be a 2 or 3 week break. I got to get back for the Newfoundland and Labrador election now. So probably 2 weeks off. And we'll be back for our 6th year in Season 11. Crazy. But at the end of the season, thank you to all my guests this year. Too many to mention. I don't want to forget anybody. Thank you to the listeners. Thank you to everybody who gives feedback and who interacts over the content on this show. Got the Blog Talk Radio page. Got the YouTube page. We're up on Spreaker, or no, not Spreaker, Stitcher. We're on iTunes. We're around. Looking into a new platform. We'll see what happens. But again, as I said, this is 5 years. Incredible. I wouldn't do it without listeners. And I wouldn't do it without guests. So thank you all for keeping me motivated. Thank you for listening to this show. We'll see what happens in Prince Edward Island. Good luck with their history making. We'll see you in a couple weeks on The View Up Here. We'll be back for Season 11. Thank you for listening. Good night.